Chapter 3. Letter from Marianne McLean to Edith and Mae. 1997. My dear daughters, please ignore my previous letter, a familiar itch behind the eyeballs, words not my own. Can you even read this? It's the medicine that makes my hands shake. Please do not be alarmed. Tremors and earthquakes in my hands and feet and face. They'll keep deforming me until there's nothing left to deform. Every morning, they put me in an ice bath up to my neck. I have never been so cold. A nurse, sadistic bitch, sits and watches my teeth chatter. I've developed a nasty cough. Pneumonia? But they say some of the fog has lifted. I am writing you girls a letter after all. My two lovelies, my ribbit and rabbit. I forgive you, and try not to think about you. I'm ashamed, of course. I want to keep you, even thoughts of you, away from this place. The suffering is in the walls, in the floor, under the tables. It's mixed into the paint. It smells like shit and fear. It gets into your nostrils, and then it's too late, because it's in you. My neighbor can't stop crying. Can't or won't. I have only recently begun to distinguish between awake and asleep. I've started writing again. Words repeat in my head. The only way to flush them out is to write them down. Poems. Your father is no saint, but he is a lot of things. I love you. It's a bell in the fog. The only thing that still exists. Be brave, Mom. Edith, 1997. What have they done to her in there? What did I let them do? The paramedics and the police? I should have lied, but I was so stunned. I told them what happened, and then they twisted it. The man with the gun holsters, pouring me an orange soda into a styrofoam cup. He was younger than the detectives on television shows, practically my age, wispy mustache. He asked me question after question, and stupidly I told him everything, and he rubbed my shoulders and wiped the orange from my mouth with a napkin. Why hadn't I kept quiet? I put her in there. She thinks so too. Why else would she need to forgive me? And now they're torturing her because of what I said. Between the ice baths and the pills they're giving her, it's a miracle she can write at all. Her handwriting was always so small, neat, round. She would press down hard enough that it was almost an engraving. You could run your fingers over the paper and feel the words. Here, though, her handwriting looks like a ghost sneezed. There is nothing in the way it looks that is hers. It could have been written by someone else. Her sobbing neighbor. Some fat slob in a turban. It makes me feel better to think it was somebody else's hand shaking over the paper. That Mom was just dictating. I read the letter again, a third time, a fourth time. I start to hear the words and not see them. My two lovelies, my ribbit and rabbit. That sounds like her. The sound of her voice in my head calms me. Bell in the fog. Even though the things she is saying, tremors, deforming me, are not very calming. I get to the beginning of the letter again and stop. Please ignore my previous letter. Where's the other letter? I ask Dennis. I never saw it. He must have hidden it from us. Dennis doesn't answer me. He's busy reading over our shoulders. He's squinting because he's too vain to get glasses. Has he gotten to the part about him yet? No saint. If he has, he gives no indication of it. I don't know what she means when she says, he's a lot of things. I assume it's bad. What did you do with the other letter? I ask him again. What letter? He says, looking down at me with his wet lamb eyes. Is he lying? Where did he put it? She said she sent another letter. You can't hide things like that from us. I feel the blood rushing into my face. It's not right. I'm not hiding anything. You're with me all the time. You see me get the mail. This is true, but it's not like we pay attention to it. He could have easily hidden it in a magazine, read it later in his room.
She probably never even wrote it, Mae says slowly. She probably just thought she did, or dreamed she did, and got confused.
That's Mae. She'll take any opportunity to make Mom look foolish. It's disgusting. Or maybe the doctors held on to it, Dennis says. They monitor her correspondence.
I imagine a doctor unfolding and reading my mother's letter, and then folding it back and putting it in a manila folder in her file, evidence against her, words she said to us in anger that will now be used to keep her locked up.
I think you're lying.
The chair falls backward as I stand, bangs against the tile on the kitchen floor. Mae puts her hand on mine, but I shake it off.
That little know-it-all traitor. No, thank you.
She probably knew about the letter all along.
Dennis must have showed it to her, and she told him it would upset me too much to see it. Well, I'll find it. Edie, what are you doing? Please don't touch my desk. Edith!
Dennis follows me into his room. He crouches, gathering the papers I threw on the floor.
Enough, he says,
as I try to swipe at a stack of papers on his bedside table. I open the book he's been reading and shake it out. A bookmark flutters to the ground, nothing else.
Edith, that's enough.
He holds me by the back of my shirt, but I leap forward like I'm on a leash. I'm looking at the windowsill. That's where he probably sat reading it, smoking, reading, crying.
Why is there so much ash in the ashtray? I say.
He burned it,
lit the tip with a match and watched the words melt.
Edie, stop.
Mae's voice is quiet. She's embarrassed.
I look at her face.
No, she's not embarrassed. She's scared. Of me.
I place the ashtray back on the windowsill, careful not to spill any of it. Mae. I was the one who threw out the first letter from Mom. I could hear the whistle of it hurtling towards us, so I intercepted it. This was difficult since I was almost never alone, but desperation makes you crafty. The envelope felt heavy and hot to the touch, and it contained 10 illegible pages, each word a barbed hook. I skimmed it, careful not to let any of the words catch in me, before I tore it up and flushed it down the toilet. I didn't want Edie getting any more agitated about Mom than she already was. I wouldn't say I wanted Mom dead. I'm not a monster. But I wanted her vacuum-sealed somewhere where she couldn't get to us. In New York, I was happy. Happy and safe from her, I thought. I failed to intercept the second letter. It arrived. Narcissistic, well-wrought, barely legible, and full of those elliptical riddles that get under your skin and tug. Edie became obsessed, analyzing it to death. What did it signify that nothing was capitalized? Mom's low sense of self-worth? Her aversion to order? Her artistic temperament? Was she a frustrated creative person with no outlet for her artistic energies? Was this the true source of her unhappiness? Would poetry prove to be her salvation? I let Edie talk and talk about it. I didn't contradict her, even though I knew that none of what she was saying was true or relevant. She did not understand Mom at all. The third letter came a few days after that. Edie was already wound up, and she pored over the new one like a cryptologist. It wasn't really a letter. There was no dear or love. It was a poem. How coy of Mom. How opaque to communicate with us in this way, to demand that we guess what it was she was trying to say, like she was Sylvia fucking Plath. What do you think it means? What do you think it means? Edie kept saying, standing too close and watching me as I read it. The poem was gibberish. The unpunctuated words together, unpleasant sounds, repeated, oppressive. Goatman's goat pelt, fur mouth, spackle choke, grind down water in the throat, ears choke. But reading it filled my mouth with the fetid taste of lake water. It made me think of those late-night trips when Mom would disappear into Lake Pontchartrain, and I would nervously pace the shore, waiting for her head to break the surface. I was dry and on land, getting devoured by mosquitoes, and I could only feel the algae squishing under my feet, the black water burning in my nose. Once Mom emerged from the water with an enormous catfish latched onto her arm. On the drive home, the fish flapped and struggled in the back seat, while Mom laughed so hard I had to steer. She was laughing, but what does that mean? It wasn't an expression of joy. It was just a sound, like something in her was trying to get out. "What?" Edie said. "What?" She sensed that I had been able to decode it in some way. It was clear to me that the poem was a suicide note. It might as well have been an acrostic that spelled out, "Goodbye, forever." How selfish. How grotesque. Why pull us into all that again? We were children. And the text, the handwriting, jerky and weak, it forced me to imagine her in the act of writing, which I also resented. I did not want to imagine her at all, because if I allowed her in, I felt like I would lose myself again. It was better to take this rare opportunity that forced her off of me and leave it that way. I never told Edie what the poem really meant. I think I made up an interpretation involving mythology and even tried to convince myself of it. But I couldn't get the images out of my head of Mom floating face down, in a lake, in a bathtub, in the neighbor's pool. I remember hugging Cronus at night and burrowing my face in his fur, letting his purring replace the static that her words had left in my head. Phone conversation between Edith and Doreen. Edith. Doreen. Doreen. Yes, Edie, baby. Edith. I need to go home. Doreen. Go home? Your mama's not up for that. Edith. Can't I stay with you? Doreen. No, baby. I have a lot on my plate right now. My brother's sick and he's staying with me. I couldn't be responsible for another human being. Edith. Doreen, I'm 16. You wouldn't have to be responsible for anything. Doreen. Did you call me just to cry on the telephone? Edith. Yes. Doreen. How's your sister? Edith. She lacks it here. She's very adaptable. Doreen. Well, shit, honey. You don't adapt, you die. Why do you say it like it's a bad thing? You don't adapt, you die. Edith. Doreen. I'm not going to talk to you if you keep sniffling. Edith. Don't hang up. Doreen. I'm not hanging up, Edith. Goddamn. Edith. Have you gone to visit her? Doreen. I went yesterday. Edith. How was she? Doreen. Not great, Edie baby. Not great. It's hard to understand what she's talking about. Edith. Did she ask about me? Doreen. Sure, honey. Sure, she did. Edith. What did she ask? Doreen. Oh, you know, how you were doing. I told her you were doing great. Edith. We're not doing great. That's not true. Doreen. Edie, sweetheart, I'm tired. My brother kept me up all night, moaning. He's in a lot of pain. I can't keep talking in circles. Edith. She sent us a letter and a poem. Doreen. Well, that's good. Edith. Did she say anything else about me? Doreen. She said, thank you for that fuzzy bathrobe you sent her. She was wearing it. I could tell she liked it. Edith. She wrote in the letter that the doctors are torturing her. Doreen. That's nonsense. You know that's nonsense. Edith. She said they're over-medicating and deforming her. Doreen. You gotta let her get better. You gotta let the doctors do their work. I have to go now, baby. Give Mae a kiss for me, will you? Edith. Yeah, okay. Tell Tyrell I said hi. Doreen. He's with his daddy, but I will when he comes back. Bye, baby. Doreen. Marianne left you with her messes. Most people walked away, but once in a while she'd find a fool like myself who couldn't. I've known her since she was in diapers. My mama worked for her daddy, Jackson McLean. Everyone liked Jackson. After his wife died, he hired my mama to help him around the house. When I was little, my mama spent so much time over there, taking care of Marianne, that, it's true, I got jealous. I had 5 younger brothers and sisters, and my mama was wasting all her love and affection on a white girl across town. She'd come home tired and lie down. People only have so much to give, and Marianne was taking it all. My friends in school, their parents worked for white people, and none of them got invested the same way my mama did. I wondered if she was in love with Jackson. When my daddy got drunk, I know he wondered too. I'd hear them fighting about it at night. Because I was the oldest, I was responsible for my brothers and sisters. I made them food when they got home from school. I sewed their clothes when they ripped them climbing fences or being wild. My mama would bring Marianne over sometimes and make me play with her, and that was one more chore on my list. My mama never said it, but I was expected to treat Marianne like a princess. We did eventually become close, just because we were similar ages and spent so much time together. We'd pick blackberries that grew wild in the bushes along the railroad tracks, and my mama taught us both how to can them and make jam. Marianne wasn't handy, and she had no common sense, but she was good at making up stories. She'd even convince herself that what she was telling you was true, and eventually you'd start believing it too. The swamps would become fairy castles and witches' lairs, that kind of shit. As I got older, though, her imagination started to bug me. I could never afford to be strange because I had people depending on me. Being weird is a luxury. I was embarrassed to be seen with a crazy white girl. She'd trail after me and my friends, floating, round-eyed, walking on her toes. Oh, it drove me crazy the way she would walk, her heels never hitting the ground. The girl could hardly make herself a sandwich. I finally got into a big fight with my mama about it. I was my high school valedictorian, and I already knew what I wanted from life. I was going to go to college and become a nurse, move out to a big city, and make something of myself. I told my mama that I didn't need Spacey Marianne, like a weight around my neck, dragging me down during my last summer at home. Oh, my mama got mad. She never usually laid a hand on me, but that time she slapped me with the comb she was using on her hair. Here we were, all of us fighting for civil rights, and this girl was my responsibility? How do you figure? How is that fair? My mama felt we owed something to Jackson, but I think she would not have gotten so angry with me if she hadn't seen my point. For years, I didn't hear from Marianne. Both of us left town, got married, had kids. For a while, the world had seemed big and anything was possible. I did what I had hoped I'd do. I moved to Atlanta, went to college on a full scholarship, and became a nurse. Then my mama got sick, and I had to move back home to take care of her. She passed away. My husband left me for someone else, and I stayed on here. Marianne had moved back too, and I still felt responsible for her. Her weirdness got darker. She wasn't happy with her husband. They'd fight and fight, loud enough for everyone to hear. I'd run into him at the store, buying paper plates because she'd broken all their regular ones. Eventually, he left after she put herself in a coma with pills. Her daughters stayed with me while she was at the hospital, and he moved out. God, she was so selfish. She'd say, "You don't understand, Dor. It's hell." Right, 'cause that ignorant little bitch was the only one who'd ever felt pain. And I'd say, "Marianne, choose the hell you know over the one you don't, because it can always get worse." It's what my daddy used to say. She didn't believe in that, though. She'd say the only hell that existed was the one she was living in. Her husband left, and things got better, and then worse again. She put me in charge in case anything happened to her, gave me power of attorney. But I had enough of my own problems. Shit, a divorce, a teenage son who wouldn't talk to me, a little brother dying in my living room. When she tried to hang herself, I did what I could. I kept her out of the state hospital, got her a bed in St. Vincent's, made sure she had good doctors. It's an expensive place, but I got her ex-husband to pay for most of it, and I rented out her house to help pay the rest. Edith, 1997. It pricks a little where the water is hitting me, but my skin has mostly gone numb. I am with you. Your eyes are the only things sticking out above the icy water. You are an iceberg. I am an iceberg. We are across the country from each other, but our teeth chatter in unison. Edie, I really have to pee. Mae is banging on the door. I turn the water off and wait. I count to 5, shivering. My fingers are numb. They don't give her the towel right away, I'm sure. The nurses make her wait, those sadistic bitches. They make her shiver like this. Edie, come on! I pull the green towel off the hook and wrap myself in it before unlocking the door. Mae pushes past me to the toilet and starts peeing as soon as she sits down. Your lips are blue, she says. They are. Like I just ate a blue popsicle. I stretch my lips out over my teeth and look at myself in the medicine cabinet mirror. You look like someone just thawed you out of a glacier, Mae says as she wipes and flushes. I move aside and let her wash her hands. Jesus! She touches my arm. I shrug her hand off. I don't need to get into it with her. Edie, what are you doing? Stop torturing yourself. Why should I? Saints whipped their backs raw, then wore shirts made of thorns to punish themselves. Cold water is nothing. Cold water is pathetic. But I don't say this because Mae doesn't like other people's feelings. Whenever Mom would get upset, you could just see it in Mae's face, her shutting down. And that's the last thing I need. Better to be calm, to move slow, and then she'll come back with me. Don't be stupid, spooks. We ran out of hot water. I lie. Then clench my jaw to keep my teeth from chattering. Mae. Anybody who's read Dad's novels could feel the intensity of his obsession with my mother. Obsession like that never really goes away. Not when it's connected to one's fundamental sense of self. He never said anything about Mom's letters, but I'm sure he heard her whistle as loudly as Edie and I did. That piercing sound that made Edie come running and made me dig in my heels. How did her letters have this power over us? I don't know. The desperation was in the negative space of everything she wrote. Before that spring, I'd never read any of Dad's books. It had never even occurred to me to track them down at a library or bookstore, because until we came to live with him, he hadn't existed for me. But in New York, I started reading his books ravenously. I devoured Cassandra's Calling. I read his novels before bed. I wanted to have the rhythms of the sentences inside me so that I could dream about them. In my sleep, though, all the characters were Mom. Sometimes Mom would turn into a strong wind and pull me somewhere. Or sometimes she would jump on my back and try to wrestle me down to the ground. I barely ever saw her face. Sometimes, and these dreams were always the scariest, I myself would turn into Mom. And then I would be on someone else's back, or turning into a wind. Edith, 1997. Mae's lamp casts large shadows on the wall as she reads in bed. Her fingers rustle the pages of her book. Cronus is lying on my feet, keeping them warm. Do you think she's gonna stay here long? I ask Mae. The woman from the basement restaurant is sleeping on the couch. She appeared in our lobby this afternoon, looking like a mess. A hospital bracelet on her wrist. That bracelet is the only thing she and Mom have in common, but that seems to be enough for Dennis. Mae doesn't respond. It's like what Mom said about him. He likes birds with their wings broken, I say. Mae isn't listening. She's absorbed in whatever it is she's reading. Kind of like you, I say to Cronus, and he squints back. You also like your birds with their wings broken, don't you? Mae's breathing has gotten too quiet. She must have gotten to a juicy part. Read it to me, I say. She's holding her breath. Mae turns the page and doesn't say anything. I reach my hand up to the coiled spring above and nudge her. "Stop," she says. I watch her shadow on the wall as she sets down the book. "I don't think you'll like it. It's kind of... I just want to hear your voice." Nothing. I hit the bed again. "Fine." She clears her throat, clears it again. At first, she was like a blind kitten in bed. Just hopeless and rootin'. Always rootin' for my... Her voice flutters. Penis. Trying to put it in her mouth. She would practically sleep with it there, or in her hand. It was like it formed a circuit, a closed circuit, our bodies. She trails off. Something squirms through me, and a weird giggle escapes. I'm thinking about Marcus and the way my throat would go numb when he came in my mouth. And then the footsteps in the stone chapel, or the footsteps on the carpeted stairs to the attic. Afterwards was always full of other people's footsteps. "Can I see it?" I ask her. She lies there, silent, too still. Why? Suddenly, I realize what she's been reading to me. My face goes hot. Disgusting. And that she hadn't warned me first? Let me lie there thinking about it, thinking about Marcus and not saying that it was some disgusting thing Dennis had written about Mom? Mae hangs over the edge of the bed and looks at me. Her eyes are in shadow, her hair a curtain. Upside down, in the dark. Her face could be someone else's. "Do you think that was about Mom?" she asks. "That little pervert." There were details that made it seem... Mae's big white forehead is inches from mine. I feel the snap of my knuckle, the thwack of my nail against her skull. She shrieks and nearly falls off the bed. Mom like a fucking kitten, rooting around for the turkey neck in Dennis's disgusting pants. I feel nauseous. Mom in a white nightgown, like a fucking kitten. Mom, Mae's age, writhing around like a fish on a hook. A big white fish, a ghost, her mouth and throat numb. It could be about anyone, I finally say. Mae doesn't respond. She's not talking to me anymore. When I try to join her on the top bunk, she sticks her leg out to block me. There is a bump on her forehead, a red welt. It must be where I flicked her. I reach for it, but she bats me away. I'm sorry. I really am. Below us, the sound of a saw. Our downstairs neighbor, Charlie, must be building something. Mae, I'm sorry. I say it again, even though she won't look up from the book. Amanda. I decided to get the abortion while I was in New York. I'd been waffling and my time was running out. I worried that if I waited to do it until I got home, it would be too late, or that Barry would somehow talk me out of it. I didn't have anyone in the city to pick me up from the clinic, so I looked up Dennis's address in the phone book and took a cab there after the procedure. I sensed that he wouldn't turn me away and that it might even be my in. And it was. He very generously offered to let me stay on his couch and recuperate. It was an unpleasant procedure, but it was in no way earth-shattering. I remember how completely surreal it felt, following Dennis Lomack and his daughters into his apartment, and then standing there surrounded by his things, feeling a little crampy and woozy from having lost so much blood, and from the residual effects of the anesthetics. I remember standing in his bathroom, staring at the hairs in his hairbrush and the dirty Q-tips in the wastebasket, and thinking that I'd made it into the reliquary. All the details from my arrival at Dennis's house still exist for me in a magnified, technicolor brightness. That first night, he made a lentil mash, which surprised me initially, but after thinking about it more, it made sense. Indian food, of course. That's exactly what he would make. There were lots of moments like that. I had sat around in my basement cubicle at UW, daydreaming about all of these little things. How does Dennis take his coffee? With cream, no sugar. How does he hold his mug? The usual way, I suppose, no stray pinkies. How does he sit? Legs crossed, sometimes. How does he walk? Not lumbering, for his size, etc. His daughters felt like characters that belonged in the world of his books. They were not friendly toward me, which was fine. It felt more authentic that way. It was flattering, their perception of me as a threat. That night after dinner, his younger daughter sat on his lap, and the cat sat on her lap, and I remember thinking that they looked like the totem pole of familial bliss. And even the older one, Edith, wasn't arguing with anyone, and they all seemed to get along quite well. Edith was so headstrong. You could imagine her caught in a rainstorm, or leading oxen across a forded river. I would have cast her in a movie about pioneers. You know, stubborn, full of principles, but still delicate somehow. I spent the next day recovering on his couch, making an inventory of his bookshelves. So these were his influences. All the Russians, and a lot of Germans. It was no longer empty speculation and lit-crit fiddle-farting. I had access. That night, after the girls had gone to bed, I followed Dennis Lomack into his room. He looked surprised, but he didn't kick me out. I touched every object on his desk while he got undressed. "Well," he said, after he had gotten under the covers and turned off the light, and I had continued to stand there in the dark, wondering if all of it was real. "Well," he'd said, just like that. "Well." How many people can say that the heartthrob in the poster came to life for them? Because that is what it felt like. Mick Jagger stepping out into my childhood bedroom. Letter from Marianne Louise McLean to Dennis Lomack. May 4th, 1968. Dear Mr. Dennis, I hung up the postcard you sent by my bed. I like to lie awake, tracing the outline of the skyscrapers with my finger and imagining you, tiny, walking through that city. All those little glowing windows have people living behind them. It's hard to believe. Maybe one day I'll visit you there? How is the book you're writing? Did you start it yet? Am I in it? Name a character Cassandra. Or put in a secret message. Like maybe on page 32, have one of the characters eat an apple. And then I'll know that you were thinking about me when you wrote it. It's been such a long time since we've seen you. I miss you. And so does Daddy. He hasn't been well. Anne told you about the trial? It's set to start soon, and though he tells me it's all nonsense, I know he worries. Mrs. Williams has been helping me take care of him. This last week, Daddy has barely gotten out of bed. But of course, he refuses to see a doctor. School has been okay. Pointless, but fine. Nobody talks to me. My only friend, Cynthia. Remember you took us water skiing? She had a huge crush on you, which I'm sure you knew. She had to move back to Illinois because her daddy had a breakdown. Something strange happened to me the other day, when I was walking back from Mrs. Williams' house. Maybe you could use it in your book. I keep thinking about it, but I'm not sure why. I guess because it scared me. It was last Thursday night when everyone was in town, watching the parades. I didn't go this year. Daddy wasn't feeling up to it. Anyway, I was walking alone in the dark on the dirt road behind the Hillhurst farm, the shortcut from our house to the river. Well, I was walking when suddenly I heard someone breathing right by my shoulder. I could feel it on my neck. I was so scared I couldn't even scream. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. I turned around to see who it was, but there was no one there. I told Doreen, and she said I was being stupid, that the sound probably bounced off the trees and created an illusion. It was my own breath I was hearing, or maybe the breath of a horse in the pasture, and it only sounded close. Maybe she's right, but that's not how it felt. Ever since then, I've felt different, like I've been marked. I worry about Daddy a lot. Maybe you could hitch a ride down here soon. I know he wants to see you, and I do too. Yours, M. Edith, 1997. We're on a bus with Dennis and Amanda, somewhere in the depths of Queens. The buildings are squat, and the signs are in Chinese. Everything looks flat and gray. Dennis hasn't told us where we're going. He says it's a surprise. Amanda won't stop asking me questions, so I moved to the back of the bus, squeezed myself between a sleeping guy in a puffy jacket and a fat lady knitting. What kind of books did your father read to you when you were little? What pet names did he use for you? Was she for real? And he wasn't doing anything to stop her, just looking out the window like we weren't there, like he wasn't the one dragging us out into the middle of nowhere. When I told Amanda to fuck off, it only seemed to make her more cheerful. I tried to get back up from Mae, but things between us have been weird. All she does is lie around reading Dennis's books. The guy next to me, his head rolls onto my shoulder with the movement of the bus, then rolls back to his chest. What if I stayed on the bus with him? Begged him to take me home? Maybe I could sleep on his couch. Or what about our downstairs neighbor, Charlie? Maybe I could use his wood shop to build my own place. Something portable. I can see Amanda across the bus, still talking. Had Dennis read to me when I was little? I seem to remember something with pictures of a tiger. What difference does it make, though? And how is it any of her business? I caught her the other day, trying to read one of Mom's letters over my shoulder. Good luck with that, Amanda. Even I couldn't decipher it. Mom's hand is now a seismograph. Soon she won't even be able to hold a pencil. The only part that was legible was Mae's name. Of course. They stand at the next stop, and Dennis gestures for me to follow. I bid a silent goodbye to the sleeping man, to the life we could have had together. Outside, the sky is low, and the air feels strange and thick, ready for lightning. Mae has dark circles under her eyes and a tiny bruise on her forehead. From me. I watch her smile at Dennis, and it reminds me of the photograph I found. The photograph of Mom. The thick air is making my heart beat faster. Amanda is talking, but I tune her out. Something is about to happen. Any moment now. But nothing does. We just keep walking. The buildings around us get uglier and more decrepit. No more brick, only vinyl siding. A moving truck idles across the street. All the furniture is out on the sidewalk. I see Mae notice it. I wonder if she's thinking of inside, outside, too. A treat Mom would do for us sometimes, where, in a burst of superhuman strength, she would drag all the living room furniture onto the lawn, and then the three of us would sit on the velvet couch, feet on the coffee table, and look up at the sky through the branches of the oak tree. Remember? I start to say, but change my mind. Amanda is too eager for any scraps, and I don't trust Mae not to ruin the nice memory. That's exactly the kind of thing she's in the mood to do. I can tell by the way she's pressing her lips together. She'll find some way to take the three of us, curled up, looking at the stars, and turn it into additional proof of Mom's failures. We get to a hill with a park entrance, a bronze plaque that none of us bother to read. Amanda is giddy. She's not walking, she's skipping, despite having been laid up on our couch for the last few days. There's a patch of trees, a dirt path that snakes away from the road. Splintery green benches, cigarette butts, and beer cans. I kick a can towards Mae, and she doesn't kick it back, doesn't even notice. When the trail makes a sharp right, Dennis stands to block our view of what lies beyond the turn. He looks awake now, alert, completely here. Close your eyes, he says. I don't. What is he going to do to me? Amanda tries to cover my eyes with her hands, but I shove her away from me. So then Dennis makes us turn around and walk backwards. I feel like I'm being walked off the plank of a ship. Something begins welling up in me, but then Dennis spins me around and it catches in my throat. We've emerged on a clearing. There, on the side of the hill, are thousands of yellow flowers glowing radioactively against the gray, overcast sky. The light is escaping from somewhere and making the ground yellower than anything I've ever seen. I feel lightheaded, dizzy. What had I thought would be here? Dennis looks triumphant. Mae is happy. Amanda looks back and forth between the two of them. I take a deep breath. The smell of dirt, the strange-looking glow of the yellow flowers on the hill. The emotions that have been building this whole walk are being rerouted. I don't want to cry, but it's hard to breathe. Yes, this place is overwhelming. It's magnificent. How did he know to take us here? Why do I feel this way? Go, Dennis says. Go, shoving me forward. I run into the field and down the hill. I'm trampling the flowers. Blades of grass whipping over my ankles. I can hear Mae behind me. She's running too, chasing me. She dives onto me, and we roll through the tall grass down the side of the hill, just like when we were little. The flowers crush under us, sharp stems and petals. It's the first time she's touched me in days. I am so happy to have her back. She's mine again. I'll do anything she wants to keep her. It hurts to breathe because I'm laughing so hard. She pulls me up. We run back to the top of the hill. She takes my other hand, too, crosses it, and starts to spin. We grip each other tight and lean back. The flowers smear yellow, the sky a circle of gray. Yellow, yellow, yellow. We fall down, and we're laughing like we share a set of lungs. The sky is so low that soon we'll be able to touch it. Our hands reach up for it at the same time. Dennis hovers over us. Mae moves her hand from the sky to his shirt collar and pulls him down onto us. He falls. We're all rolling now. Someone's foot is in my stomach, elbow in my face. We collapse at the bottom of the hill, then slowly sit up, our limbs still tangled. Amanda crawls towards us. A raindrop hits my arm. Amanda and Mae both look up at Dennis. I don't know why he needs me, too, but he does. He peels a flower petal off my cheek and draws me towards him, presses me against his chest. I let him for a while to please Mae, inhale his smell of cigarettes and sweat, then pull away. He looks at me and I feel shy. I remember a plaid wool blanket, a lake, a popsicle melting down my arm, Mom and him reciting poems together. This was before Mae, when it was only me. Something stabs through me. I don't know if it's joy or not, but whatever it is, it hurts, and I don't want it. I sit up. No, I don't want it. I don't want what he's offering me. There's a big flat stone near us. Amanda won't stop talking. I see another flat stone, and then another. How did I not notice before that we're in a cemetery? We've been rolling around on top of people. This is just like when Gregor takes Cassandra, Amanda is saying. Did I hurt Dennis's feelings by pulling away? He looks only at Mae now. Her head is in his lap. They're staring at each other. It's probably not the best time to bring it up, but I do anyway because I can't stand watching them stare at each other like that. I interrupt Amanda. Mae and I have to go back, I say. No, Mae says. Yes, I say. We'll take the bus home this week. I'm never going back, she says. She sits up. Her face looks crooked, dreamy. I'd rather die. I don't know what to say to this. It was her that Mom wanted, not me. There's a steady drizzle now. Amanda scurries under the trees for cover. Dennis stands and helps Mae up. The rain is getting harder. It runs through my hair, trickles down my back. He offers me a hand, but I don't take it. Mae, I try to coax her. You know we have to. She needs us. Mae shrugs. Needs us for what? She walks away to join Amanda under the tree. To get better, I call after her. Mae and I are going home, I say to Dennis. His hand is still outstretched for me. Water drips down his forehead and into his eyes. You have no right to keep us from her. He squints. I'm not keeping you from her. Your mother is not well, he says. I stand without his help. She's not well because of you, I say. Who else? He broke her somehow. He changed her. He wipes his face, exasperated. What do you think I did? What do you imagine I did to her? I follow him under the tree, where Mae and Amanda are. You did something, I insist. He's about to lose it, I can tell. and then Mae can see for herself who it is she's siding with. Did something to whom? Amanda says. Shut up, I tell her. Mae is staring glassily at the rain hitting the grass. She isn't even listening. Whatever he did to Mom, he'll do to her too. We're going back, I say to her again. Her face quivers with irritation. Are you deaf? She walks away from me, out into the rain, up the hill where we came from. Amanda stands there like a wet bobblehead, looking between us, back and forth. Why are you even here? I scream at Amanda, because it's easier to scream at her than at my sister. She nods, she backs away. Mae. That afternoon was the first time I felt... I don't know how to describe it exactly. My head was in Dad's lap, and all the happiness that I'd missed was being compressed into that moment. I looked up at him, and I was no longer me. I was Mom, but not as I knew her. This wasn't her forcing her darkness on me, like a bag over my head. No, this was something else. I'd become Mom from many years ago. Dad felt it too, I could tell. Maybe it would have lasted longer if not for Edie, talking and talking, pressing and pressing. She wanted to take me back to the other mother, the one in the mental hospital who needed me brought to her, tied and quartered, like a sacrifice.